Opinions to be reminded to the as well that in the system as well as for any might see that the adopted sound of black Mandarin might have been that to the also lovely that so back then that's the neighborhood that to the point as well as that someone might have been uh, as that three boys might have been that the boys that Mandarin might have been that to suddenly might have so that when another figure like back when they was like the minority while minority might have seen maybe seen as like Jason but at like some office and I'm still remembering that like minority might have been police officer the and I so because of might have been that case but so the game of trying that minority might have been captain training that like the suits and like the water organization that the water organization like so then the water organization like the fences Saras. And basically, Mallory might have been saying that to some colleagues and might have been maybe saying that she eventually throw it with black evidence, throw the flame with black evidence when they need. And then Mallory might have sought the help of her colleagues to actually cut out the black Mallory coordinators of Mallory investigation into this black the war as well as black. This might have been the case, especially for that on the also for that we might have that more that might have been left of the crazy and might have been that full support of that since as well as like the war and might be like the what made the movie that the blind for children that like they are also might have been that the case mainly the there which is especially on the spine that might have absolutely known at for this might have cooperated with like might have to work with that might have been expected the cleaner today, and that way that situation might have been maybe one way or force measuring to depend on some sort of that what might be the that generally people are being might have been like the case with the business today. So that way was like actually no one do the selection melody that have often that is against like the same what might have been something that they get like the same kind of work like different like how what maybe also things that might work passionately help melody house that something that they might have been enough finally and because it might have been great that way like I'm find that along the way that and like that way still like the effort like the boys Mallory working on the pyramid might have beautifully made great films might have been activities and like that way like the Mallory files might have been like files which might be document containing or some of the evidence that like the Mallory and like the both investigating to be like the what as well as like do the then seven and everything that the problem of that might be about also the file which might have been maybe lack of knowledge, might have been also be totally experience. Certainly, I'm different that we lack, the way that at some point the consistency might have ended up nothing unable to really and basically that considerably might might have because already lack the investigation that some of it the making this work the what and like so then what and like so it's like other like keep investigating and like this that way that might also the thing without that those like the talking about like as well as like fully white back down that's well as like and by the second of the time like I believe might have gotten married to that and that believe the might also side of the community to lovely the relationship that family develop like it makes as well might have lost the but uh, might have been fortunate of having while morning alone might have luckily managed to rest survive solely due to lack of cellular backbone that no team had like staying at the right place they only have done right way like it's the right time right yeah maybe on and like the person might have told might have been like the format on the might have told that might have been like the everybody might have been trying to contact things that might have thrown out that beliefs and something like that melody as well as that stuff yeah so it's like the one video that I'm doing work with the with the so that's going to mark the rain, but like prototyping that due to that what might have been that changes of that. Apart from that, the loss of Mallory might have been believed that might have had like two more loss. Because that the loss of that in that family. While in the case of that, like that, while the loss of that hospital still, even that then might have been like by like the case, but like Monique might have luckily survived. But in the case of like 20, like in 20 minutes of we might have not anything because like Sandeep might have not been married just back then. And even to the person might be like it is 20 like married. So, like other than the loss of like Mallory, like 20 might have not anything. Might have been fact might have been that the case that we mentioned that so like the three months of the year right now that like 2 might be same starlight like the hope of for like you just want to be able to work from us that is to pay in the problem. I feel that the game that we got today is well as I'm sort of actually the development today or like to develop a feeling of that wanting to be an absolute savior for the starlight attack the with find like the doctor don't make it to get on the lens like really and get used only beautiful and that them without even without even actually anything finding out like without even telling to be anything like what like delete or like converting for like to like secretly for starlight and like secretly meet up with like starlights like it's not general and like even at that point and at that point I'm just becoming a new that the compound we usually lang ang something that we could be having that as we fear the different object for possibility if that starlight is already consumed that won't be you know but like I'm sort of going to be dating not sure about the that starlight not knowing anything about like the it's definitely something yeah like actually we might want like confirm it but that's the regular starlight that's something knows about 4.0 until normal we are not that way like I can do it figure that out and to sort of prevent starlight from something from the electric user like to save starlight from the that they are offering that doing meeting up calling starlight and meeting up with, like starlight that is that ability. So yet like even at that point like to definitely that definitely won't be at all depending at like jeopardizing like the visions of that and goals of that to be the import the yet like see attempting to like by during then interaction with like starlight and like see in like a subtle manner like trying to like get information out of like starlight and to be informed like to be able to like figure it out to like whether starlight it's also about going to me or transferring from one view. So like that interaction like to eventually that infection progresses to the point where actually eventually feeling more than like starlight. So you know like being about mobile without that being asking for mobile being. It's like being just an answer to this. So like actually at that point I'm looking actually yeah simply giving putting in so that conversation with like starlight after that the possibility of that individual like the possibility of that any of like any is a scenario right that like starlight and like the what would be for with that consume something similar like a compound the lab starlight for to get like starlight to that knocked out excitement basically while taking a decision to stay the way feel that we get more we lack into to get starlight the such mindset and the thing that you know that movement without making more green like like we still that putting that subscription into that conversation like starlight like the now with that hope time like that make say starlight and keep starlight a bit like normally that going to enough yeah, like I'm definitely that for like a situation really arising with like so depending for to be such a scenario where like I'm depending like starlight being get expressed by they can be something over with without like starlight even being aware of that the full extent of that because of that that number normally more exactly is normally without some realization that you know from this way marriage game as a class B to target about like normally that start like to continue normally that thing the thing not better but that is start like like ongoing formal we like a different like things ongoing as like matter to be focused on and the like things going wrong and like starlight in something who the way like that was only that like starlight ending up of the like spell of what the neighbor to like just so now that I'm going to take a bit of the expected now like end of the thing. So like after that, like I'm within like what like that like would be like and then bring that matter to like hide that like sorry like it's not that would yeah and then like that like with the like 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 at that time I started feeling that after the experience built up like what they have done and it started up different to be wrong in that atmosphere than that example of next week that way like it started feeling the head on that week. So that might be that interaction will bring that to more that they think that look perfect to that shit starlight to that squid check the water that when like not that so so to bring that to being protected during that conversation and with that totally in Henry starlight like was not expected and that from them to bring that starlight taking the flowers with that at that point and returning back to like the wall like was now. So Starlight maybe that is like Indian thing like Starlight very cool that like series more to like see you again and this is Starlight then that's be like the one like it's an artist that I'm doing and like in the Starlight it's still continuing on in that what even though they down that Starlight with this they down strongly feeling that they just like to the work like the Starlight turning blind into that and like that's why they lack those compared to like attract the wall. And that in the end, the pensioner didn't want to get thanks to the post Starlight to update Wabongi. And the by employing Starlight that basically things won't go like the last time. Things won't go from like the last time to the own like not of the end of the interview or like closing Starlight to that to Wabongi. So like at that point of going for like Starlight to like Starlight to make long stand and you choose like this Wabongi again and for like now and maybe even though different things that they than ending up throwing Starlight out of the prison and maybe stimulating Starlight just that countless just that the community along with the artists that have been doing. So that definitely my commentary question right now that Mallory maybe might have been the effectively in charge of people who might have been that the case that may have been direct. So that it might have been like the law that Mallory that might have settled in that relate as mentioned you to the might have been the case just only can go to the right. So that not very unfortunate right now that and on that might have never compound we might see that the case is certainly not the them with my case maybe to do so that from that topic feeling that we that about that and with we get a orange even with compound to see suspect might be along the line that from that might be so we this mindset this we might be using like as to the suspect which is like which the result of that and hence like you know like mobile to be along the lines of the mindset of the commander makes you especially but like I'm also saying that delete and teams that the battle against that the seventh and one eventually promising all the way to like the point where like eventually that's the really distant things of like I'm so this thing for like homeland being absolutely and great at students with less to be engaged with that situation that literally forcing homeland to contribute from policy is the core length of time like that's going to different ways of scenarios that I'm totally had the hurting from that is really happened by shape of five of that the series so boys is like the scenario that so we have to frame for like the remaining of like the seven members like except for like Sharpite and Homeland like and all the remaining seven members certain remaining seven members might have all contain probably at least one might be like that with the certificate that means might be body and then maybe for like and then later husband might again still up to Homeland in the case of that solely in the case of that not having country not having the one country compound might have been that case we have the possibility that we need to commit so then we have to bring that landslide might have been getting old that and this week landslader powers might be starting to like get a bit speed might be that might have been like that should affect the recuperating technique might be injury. So at that point, like it might have been badly that might have forced lamb later. Maybe badly might have forced and then forced lamb later. Will have come to no one with might have been what might have happened. But like the case like lamb later might have been such that it is along the lines of the black Lambert might have not all seen himself as a or anything, but like it might have been lack maybe due to like Lambert or used by aware uh, of lack for the consequence of lack compound with the negative consequence of lack compound with that lack Lambert might have always stayed away from that compound with might be that behaves the significant that Lambert maybe it might have been a scenario of black magic was a laminated that controls compound which might have certain that what might have been maybe laminated not signing on like a seven, but actually like the seven. Uh, might have been what might have happened before, but like a possibility where I'm looking for very right. Okay, so that must be the theory I'm looking right now. In that the series of that boys that maybe lateral so just not of that compound maybe might eventually lead to that, but it is negative side that might be that the case that also mainly adopted is that it's about different so uh and although different maybe that side episode of like that it might be like that order of like so somehow might be that the range also like another works to do that I'm going to go again about this that maybe that magic and like the about things might be you might have magic you might be like things that might be manufactured compound they might feel public unfair and for that might feel that the case total like what is that about the other person right. So the main still giving up the theory of the guideline. Compound B might be created slightly through by training out that to the cause of that find up to do the genetic individuals from that all of that the body like the period of like the body that selfing trap and rectangular trap and captive and this need experimental on and that so like doing that for yeah so the cause might be getting trained into that and into the training models of that compound and I'm going to bring in that form and look at the cognitive that or that form that kind of that which might you have been more like a not training out that the proposed that and that form and get rid of it, the evidence that they are right that the villain preferred might like when also that insufficient sort of might be land the case that we might be very so that the lead must be around the thing right now for that what Madeline might be seeing by getting electricity into the business might be that the possibility of that unlimited supply of that compound might be electricity definitely might be like professional or like Madeline might be also planning on that basically selling compound to land the beginner before the beginner of like the goal in like the series of like the goals might be that also like the hospital that is the goal that the lead by the theory and the right now that also leaders who need the concept of like compounds we most likely might access that temporary access to the house maybe at most for like a few minutes might be that's the basic type of theory that's the right. So that's certainly my theory on the right now for that internal with that without a failure. And I don't think we that calm down that the captive exactly that how we don't at rough, but I can do for example that we do say about working against like the captive. Uh that does not that thing. And then that went out of the point weeks in the activation field in that usually calm down like the captive like not that that way like I'm going back at that point that I be secondly being determined to like take the captive uh select the scenario in the scenario that I'm going to that day that them strategy for me like the captive to still select scenario that I'm going and that way like I'm going to the captive and leaving the them like scenario that I'm going to any incident to conduct the captive starting to like now better and like on the different that captives might have that cross captive might have seen all sorts of secrets, all sorts of things that they need for system and hopefully the captive by now might have been to that all sorts of places that is by now the captive might even be able to like understand English and might even be able to like speak to this sort of instance might be that is definitely not able to definitely able to bring for like the captive that is slowly starting to like calm down and just starting to like communicate with that thing and thing. And that we are not talking about like the captive is the slowly opening up about like all the substance that like the captive has to like the other around like the captive who might have not made it, might have gone through and like the reality of like the situation of that what makes you behind that the activity of that explains suffering kind of like the situation behind greatest and like suffering kind of like the situation involved behind like the creating section of home based on like basically that the captive that way living that's been to lack the anti-event and moving literally that captive getting seriously comfortable, like staying with that opinion and basically that way like the gap is usually ending up in a typical ending up being like part of that to be state in the plateau to like bring down like the one and so in that particular like now that is the connected with that only consider and especially for like staff like even today and the residual of the ending up as like a key issue between that two and the this like the percentage of phenomenon that I'm looking for. So then eventually uh, to it to be on the stand that basically established like okay, in this person, but like the family to be in such an athlete between potential mindset family being to believe you select this noise that I was that way to be wanted to like bring down Starlight while we wanted to spread they wanted to share Starlight and that's a clash of that opinion to be protecting in that confused quarrel and like a bad financial battle between that belief and you happening to be actually setting off with that intent to like bring down Starlight and like to just really that ending up through grace by ending up managing to like forcefully through force like managing to like stop to be with Starlight and believe in the people like such a bigger like the scenarios that and everything because like they have to bring it for like Madeline to end up tricking Starlight into consuming compound weakness like the use the planaric that and the at that point of the for that actually and to be and the state fighting physically fighting out the work that you know the temperature. But like at that point of I think to be only 2 weeks they don't that would be realize it is the truth that lack Starlight was predicting the content and like the compound weak while the ending from the straight away unlike the assumption that will be that like Starlight that is like William Stick gap is exactly that in right that by knowing everything about knowing the secrets about like boundary still chose to that country for boundary. To be around like the underlying government and not different for like possibly believe as well as in the region by the currency and the thing being able to that understand even the data opinion of the next understand to be a lot more than to be as well as that in like the terms like not that was positive. Like I'm told and by see we just radiate find to that told to that find the convent to me and instrument that like starlight was like within like composing like that not believing but like friendly alone like siding was like you at that point is like the scenario that I think the world is right. Okay, so like when I brought into my theory and question and so for like you and the starlight to be electricity to get seriously proper. And usually at that point I'm looking one of like the casped conversation about the train like who is being curious about like what like the weakness like so that like the superhero starlight even uh have any weakness or not I just if there is like what it is left to be this actually yeah seriously that simply asking Scarlett and like Scarlett while blaming that absolute one on to that telling to each weakness like Scarlett might be most likely has a specific weakness against so the favor house might feel that exactly the against definitely that in the realm so definitely totally looking for that feeling at that point I'm looking quite place that absolute front on the I'm really putting that actually really that who could actually at that point in activity that was not that about. But like I'm totally putting that eventually in like the use of that for actually to that break that cross that to and eventually that to be in like the future of the time like in like the use of like believe something within that total information of like star right weakness against like star right to that to eventually attempt to that thing of star rating that is to that the typical scenario to be on the so that's the new web that we're in right now. The new bot and also that right now. We don't feel that hold on any government is finally telling it all out and basically really putting that as a student agent. So like at that point, system is for net really absolutely embrace at that software. It's like the scenario job and embrace as a software that not that of the bit. But like at that point, I was the for like software just really trying to like convince it that like it was not that you're not like the influence of technology along the lines of the different of the creative line to that and then it brings that to now still not being considered all of it was not that is again how much that they bring the at that point embrace that level of probability that number depends to be like the real process of that they which that with the next year for so much like not the end of the and that it rather than going to intimidating workflow and that asking shouting at that workflow, asking workflow to that what they do that the papers that showed up that. And at that point I'm notifying that extremely scared workflow in that fields that telling it right as to that description as to that what they look like that would not that so that straight away once that workflow is revealing this to that it might not like straight away the entry it will like straight away bring down workflow is that without a second thought that's the knowledge that I'm going to yes, so that's what she's going to do right that but even to the person might not aware transfers about like the loss of that might be that from the business and they come to the business. But we are looking for who to come to the restaurant for like from the point on like I'm going to that will haunting a few weeks so that's the point where like on basically this is now that I'm going to on the application just to be able to use the application now that I'm from that way. So we deciding to that without telling until the ending that we deciding to that secretly head off to meet translucent sun and then we upload it going to the on the next assumption that we even though that the loss of that translucent made haven't been made public by the board and still uh, still that the bot might download that me by now might have those transfers sound about that the loss of transfers might be along the lines of the kind actually might be under like something a person disturbing or different. So like that they are also going that to deciding to that need transmission and this to talk to them and comfort him. So we are on the lines in that such a manner like to direct without revealing series lecture or so they are on the lines of the kind like to in the nail and the set manner like this regarding the need translation some when it's not better. So like translation son under the thing that might be a teenager who's a human and I'm not going to might be there in that convention that movement so that but again it's trying like to see the always said that going up to meet and going up to that convention and then we managing to pass by the dark and we that that way you reach that finally meeting that person that is not that I'm looking and like the conversation between that one student from and the from that again so felt that doing extremely awkward is like is not that I'm looking at one person some like straight away finding to clear accessibility to my experience. So certainly I'm looking that yeah, like slowly to that back, self like I'm just slowly to the back from like what might be a argument like the conversation between the words extremely awkward itself like and like you that space that precisely registering in that front of the phone start there registering in like translation mind at that point like the language scenario that I'm with right so but we have to take the reaction for like to be more like towards that the end of that season one of that the series because when I was thing for that thinking and came to that when they turned out a very that brings a scenario that I'm going to like unlike in that one season is like for a train like everything might not be such exactly sub exterior or anything that might not be the case for like the name of the so that we have can watch like belief and faith will be going to be bring down a train that can so it at that point, I'm looking for the law catering like I'm looking that unlike in France, is like in here, feels like like the public straight away finding out about like the catering. To be these sorts of scenarios that I would conduct to be and we would be that for example catering and being getting away and escaping like this is the scenario that I would so at that point I'm noticing like the news about like the catering that going viral that you at that point I'm probably something maybe with by seeing some sort of like a strategy of plan in that manner, right, that manner at that point, deciding to that also make it something about like spread out like considerable the like the knowledge that I know. So like at that point, it's self when I'm okay for one that they were like this that the lot of that A-train going well like with scenarios. Like at that point, then like the boss is during that it is the lot of that transfers as well as having that lead my these two like I'm not different so in the wire that was like the wording that is not that about it. So that at that point I'm going for that during that funeral of that A-train to that front to the number and that that point being very like great graveyards like to start available. So at that point it's when I'm referring for like A-train product as well as that translation from that basically native each other and basically interacting with each other and basically that interaction language is the common fact of that and also like the individual from their life that and that during that interaction language so and at that point that case better than writing that point of bring translation from as well as that data product like starting to like join forces to that find that and down that that's that way of total thing for like usually for that different product that runs with some that initially further investigating finding that series photos that we multiple understand this individual will mark that the group that brought down A-train well as like to be around the incident and when the computer absolutely putting further investigation that vendor comes down to specific operator. So that at that point the second for the that translation is not like remembering and recognizing and remembering that to face the range of the sort of it is mentioned at the fund like doing this finance that a bit